All right, good morning and welcome back to Advocacy, Alchemy with Professor Ross. I want to talk for a few minutes about something that seems to be going on quite a bit. And as you see, this article I have pulled up is from Forbes, and I've been seeing some things about this on the internet. About people trying to use some sort of glitch, and they call it, in this article, they say a viral Chase bank glitch, and they say isn't the hack people thought it was. All right, so today I want to just talk about the first part of this article. Once again, this is from Forbes. I'll put the link in the description. But what I want to talk about is the underlying crime that they're speaking of and what this could mean for people who have used this exploit. All right, let's read and see what this article says at the very beginning. It says a viral social media trend exploited a loophole for JP Morgan Chase customers to get free money at the ATM. Or so they thought. The glitch involved depositing fake checks for large sums of money and removing the portion of available funds before the check cleared. While this so-called glitch is essentially a form of check fraud, it demonstrates the harmful nature of viral activity combined with poor financial advice in times of financial stress or hardship. All right. Once again, you can go back and read more about this, but we get the essentials of what's going on here. You have some sort of ATM deposits that are being done in order to basically defraud JP Morgan Chase. Let's look up what check fraud is. And is it a felony, federally, or state? All right, our first question we're going to ask is check fraud. Is it a felony federally or state? So it basically is a federal or a state penalty. Check fraud can be prosecuted under both federal and state laws. All right, that's important for us all to understand. So if you know anyone who was thinking about doing this, don't do this. That's the very first thing. Don't try this in your home location, or don't suggest that anybody else try this, because this is both a federal crime and a state crime, depending on the circumstances and the amounts involved. Now, I've been hearing about people taking upwards of tens and even hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time and placing the money in their own bank account. Now, once again, banks are highly regulated and they're watched all the time. This is never going to be a smart move. Let's see. All right. Let's talk about the federal government first. Okay, it says check fraud can fall under the bank fraud statute of 18 USC section sign 1344, which carries severe penalties, including fines of up to $1 million and imprisonment for up to 30 years. All right, so this is a very serious. Check fraud is very serious on the federal level. Additionally, fraudulent certification of checks is a federal felony under 18 USC section 1004, which can result in fines of up to $250,000 and up to 5 years in prison. Fraudulent certification of checks. I think this is talking about a person on the bank side, so an inside job of, say for instance, and before I talk about that more, how about we we simply put that in to figure out exactly what it is. All right, so once again, this is just like if we were doing an internet search on Google or anywhere else. Let me put that up there so it doesn't get in the way. I'll need to plug in this device too so it doesn't lose power here in a second. Certification of checks. All right, this is what this means. A certified check is a type of check for which the issuing bank guarantees that there will be enough funds available in the account. So I'm talking about certified checks to cover the check amount when it's presented for payment. The bank verifies the account holder's signature and the availability of sufficient funds. All right, so this may be talking about if a person does some sort of scheme and then produces a certified check based on that scheme. Certified checks simply mean that the bank certifies that you have this much money in the bank. So basically it's a stronger check. Personal checks don't really have that verification that the money is there and waiting for you. Certified check says that the money is here and waiting for you because we've already put it on hold. All right, at the state level, check fraud is often charged as a misdemeanor, but it can be elevated to a felony based on the value of the check or the number of checks involved. For example, in Ohio, all right, passing a bad check is generally a misdemeanor, but can become a felony if the check is a large amount and if multiple checks aggregate to a large amount within a 6-month period. That's talking about in Ohio. Let's do Texas. Now, I'm not in Texas. I don't practice in Texas, but let's look at what the law is in Texas for check fraud. And let's say we'll do a round number, $10,000. All right, check fraud in Texas of $10,000. All right, in Texas, check fraud involving the amount of $10,000 can be prosecuted under the Texas Penal Code, Chapter 32, which deals with fraud offenses. So we're doing a hypothetical. If a person were in Texas and they come into your office and they say, I have this situation I'm dealing with. You remember that TikTok sensation of take this money or take out some of the money due to your bank saying you've been a customer here so long that we will acknowledge that you made a deposit and we'll make some of those funds available depending on the size of the check. All right, so this is found at section 3221 of the Texas Penal Code. All right, it says that this defines forgery as altering, making, completing, executing, or authenticating any writing so that it purports to be the act of another who did not authorize that act, or to have been executed at a time or place or in a sequence other than what was in fact the case. All right, look at the penalties for check fraud. You have 180 days up to 2 years and the fine up to $10,000. All right. If the check fraud involves additional factors, such as use of stolen checks or identity theft, the charges and penalties may be more severe. Stealing or receiving a stolen check is a Class A misdemeanor, punishable by up to 1 year in county jail, a fine of up to $4,000. Now we're talking about Texas here. All right. Now in Arkansas, we also define these as check fraud would go under a forgery. We have different degrees of forgery depending on how much or how many of the checks were taken or the circumstances, just like how Texas is talking about. These are considered Class B and C felonies here in Arkansas. All right, if you're facing charges with check fraud, yeah, always. If anyone is facing any sort of charges based on this sort of money glitch, as they're calling it, you need to get in contact with a lawyer to assist you in defending yourself or your family members or anyone that you know. This is a very serious offense, and as you have seen, it carries quite a bit of time. It's not something that can be easily rectified, and it's going to take some explaining. Now, also, that's why there's such a huge issue right now with the platform TikTok. Why the government has thought about banning the platform altogether due to the type of misinformation that can be put out and the ability to sway people to do certain things that they usually probably would not do. Okay, all right, let's take a look. If you have a federal case, check fraud. For 10,000. All right, so if you have a federal case for check fraud for 10,000, let's look and see what the implications are and where that's found. All right, so if you have a federal check fraud for 10,000, okay, come on, I don't need to see, I know the battery's low. All right, so the federal law for check fraud involving 10,000 can be prosecuted under several statutes, including 18 U.S.C. Section 1344, which is bank fraud. And then you have the fraudulent certification of checks. You have the two different ones. All right, so for bank fraud, you can get up to 30 years. For fraudulent certification of checks, you can get up to 5 years. You can get and a fine of up to $250, and that's $250,000. All right, mail fraud. All right, this is found at Section 1341. If the check fraud involves the use of the mail system, it can be prosecuted as mail fraud. So say for instance, if somebody starts some scheme where they send you a fake check to deposit, and then they request for you to give them some of the money once you've deposited it, knowing that it's a fake check, the penalty is up to 20 years in prison, a fine of up to $250,000 per count. So per count means depending on how many of these checks and how many times you tried to run this game, this scheme. The fraud involves if it involves a financial institution or a federal disaster relief. All right, federal disaster relief. All right, what this means, in the most common terms of what we've seen recently, is when you try to defraud FEMA, or remember the COVID-19 PPP loans. All right, that's a federal disaster relief program. All right, fines can go up to $1 million per offense. All right, let's see, identity theft. If the check involves the use of a stolen identity information, additional charges and penalties may apply. All right, so this is a very serious thing. So anyone who's heard about this or who may be attempting to try this Chase bank glitch, don't do it. All right, because you'll end up in a world of trouble. And I've even began to start seeing people talking or people showing their balances where they have balances in the negative who tried to use this scheme. And I've seen tens of thousands of dollars people tried to use this scheme to benefit themselves. So not only is their account not now showing a negative, but look at some of these charges somebody potentially could get. I mean, this is ridiculous. Let's throw in a different one. NY. Check fraud. All right, since New York has been in the news, or it's always in the news, it's sort of the the business capital of the United States almost. So in New York, check fraud is primarily addressed under Article 190 of the New York Penal Law. Here are the key points regarding check fraud and the associated penalties. Issuing a bad check. All right, this is found under section 190.05. It says a person is guilty of issuing a bad check when, 1, as a drawer or representative drawer. A drawer simply means a person who goes to draw on an account, which means to take money out of an account. They utter a check knowing that they or their principal do not have sufficient funds with the drawee. Drawee means the bank, to cover it. And they intend or believe at the time of the utterance that payment will be refused by the drawee upon presentation, and payment is refused by the drawee upon presentation. Number 2, they pass a check knowing that the drawer does not have sufficient funds with the drawee to cover, and they intend or believe at the time the check is passed that payment will be refused by the drawee upon presentation, and payment is refused. Okay. So this is either you bring the check in yourself or you bring it in on behalf of someone else. This is a Class B misdemeanor here. Issuing a bad check is a Class B misdemeanor. It can result in imprisonment for up to 3 months, a fine of up to $500. Now, forgery. So issuing a bad check is a little bit different than forgery. Forgery is found at section 170.10. If the check fraud involves altering or forging a check, the charges can be more severe. You have forgery in the 2nd degree, forgery in the 1st degree. All right, this is a Class D felony, punishable by up to 7 years in prison, a fine of up to $5,000. That's for the 2nd degree. For the 1st degree, which is the more severe, it's a Class C felony, punishable by up to 15 years in prison, a fine of up to $5,000. So they doubled the time that person can go to prison. And you have restitution you might have to pay. Look at this, restitution. Defendants convicted of check fraud are often ordered to pay restitution to the victim, which includes the amount of the bad check plus any associated fees and costs. All right, come on, get to 20% so you stop. All right, presumptions. Under the New York Penal Law 190.10, there are presumptions that the drawer knew of the insufficiency of funds if certain conditions are met, such as the drawer having no account with the drawee at the time of the utterance, or the check being presented for payment within 30 days of issuance and being dishonored. That means somebody revoked the check. They put a stop payment on it. Okay? All right, so as you see, check fraud is a real thing. It's something that is prosecuted all the time. All right, we deal with these all the time. I've seen and been involved with cases where people have been alleged and convicted of forgery. All right, so be careful out there. Use your mind. All right, think. Always look up everything. Get receipts. If something sounds too good to be true, of course, it's not true. All right, there's no such thing as free money out here. And you're definitely not going to get free money out the ATM, ever. Okay? Unless you win the lottery, and even then, that's not free because you have to pay taxes on the money, everything else. All right, so nothing is free, and it's just a scheme in the end. And you could end up in prison for a very long time for being the one who coerces others to get involved in this scheme also with you. Okay? Don't do this. Encourage others to not do this also. Once again, this article will be below. But if you just put into your search bar, and actually, here, let's do that. Chase Bank check fraud. Let's see what pulls up. Chase Bank check fraud. Look, it pulls back this thing. Chase Bank glitch leads to check fraud consequences. Chase Bank check fraud incident. Recently, a viral trend on social media platforms like TikTok has led to widespread check fraud involving Chase Bank. This glitch allowed users to deposit fraudulent checks and withdraw funds before the checks were cleared. Here are the key points. Description. Users deposited fake checks of large amounts into Chase Bank ATMs and withdrew the funds immediately, exploiting a system glitch. All right. Once again, this is an open and shut case. This is a ticket to prison. This is a ticket to 3 hots and a cot. All right. Fraud. Chase Bank has confirmed that this activity constitutes check fraud. Depositing a fraudulent check and withdrawing funds before it clears is illegal. All right. All right, look at some of the consequences. Account lockdowns. This is the consequences on the bank side. Account lockdown, negative balances. Then you got the legal implications. Participants could face severe consequences, including fines, penalties, and potential jail time. Chase is working to reclaim the withdrawn funds and may pursue criminal charges. Expert warnings. Let's see. Is there a sum of how much all right, that's a fair question. All right, I just want to see if they know or if there's been any idea. Is there a sum of how much Chase Bank has lost due to this scheme? As of now, there's no specific sum reported for the total amount Chase Bank has lost due to the recent check fraud scheme involving the infinite money glitch. So they're talking about it like it's a video game almost. However, individual reports indicate that some users have withdrawn tens of thousands of dollars before checks cleared. For example, one user reported pending deductions totaling nearly $40,000. Another reported a negative balance of over $10,000. Chase Bank has actively been working to reclaim these funds and has locked accounts and imposed negative balances for those involved. So you'll be able to find out when they have their next earnings disclosure. All right, and that's for people involved in their trading, public trading of their stock. They have meetings for their shareholders, and they talk about how much money they're taking in, how much money they lost. They'll probably talk about this at their next investor meeting to sort of give an idea of how much was lost due to this scheme. Now, if you got a couple people here, that's $50,000 from just two people that they're talking about, for example. And like I said, this thing had went viral on the internet, and people started talking about this. And it's an obvious scheme. They could have lost millions, tens of or hundreds of millions of dollars based on this. $50,000 from two people. All it takes is 20 cases like this, and you have $1 million right there. There's way more than 1 million people who tried this. All right, so with that, this is Professor Ross with Advocacy, Alchemy. quick lecture on check fraud, what it means, what some of the punishments are on the federal side, doing an example on a couple of states. We use Texas and New York. Don't try this, and encourage all the people you know who may be thinking about trying this. Do not try this scheme. It can land you in prison. This is Advocacy Alchemy with Professor Ross. Have a good morning.